Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to share a phrase with you guys that I think really accurately describes the development of strength, and that is strength is forged in the fires of training volume. And what I mean by that is that your strength potential is developed through the volumes of trainings that you do to build up all the musculature of these big lifts that you're trying to do in these big movement patterns. Because it's not even just lift, it can be movement patterns, right? Because if you're strong at big lifts like this carries over into sports endeavors and everything else. The ability to push, pull, squat, explode, and all these, or pull or exert maximum force through these different planes and angles also could be against things that aren't weights also. And when we understand that, we also understand that the specificity of strength while there may not be fully as important as it's been made out to be. In other words, if you develop strength through all the muscles and general movement patterns that you're going to be using for a big lift, you're still going to be really strong at the big lift, and you're going to be strong at any sports application or real world endeavor that you do outside of the weight room that happens to involve similar patterns of your body. Right? Because there's always carryover. Anything that's relatively similar to what you've been doing has carryover. That's why we can do things in the weight room that have sports specificity to your sport that still involve using a weight or a resistance through that plane of motion. Hey, there's a reason having a 500-pound bench press probably makes you good at pushing somebody out on a football field. Right? It should be common sense. There's a similar movement pattern involved. Same muscles are being used. So we come over to the point with the training volume. Because you guys will see through here me doing some maxes with a deficit deadlift, a 2-inch deficit deadlift, maxing against 65 pounds of band tension on the bench press. But then you'll also see me doing a lot of my main supplemental lifts to build those up. And what you'll notice here is that these are all movements that are easier to recover from than those big exercises. They're similar movement patterns in this case. I'm not even using general hypertrophy examples here. We're actually using similar movement patterns. So we could discuss both hypertrophic potential of building the muscles involved along with actual movement pattern carryover. Because if you watch me do these safety squat bar good mornings, isn't that a fairly similar movement pattern to a conventional deadlift? It's not perfect, but it's pretty close in terms of the way the hips and everything hinge. Right? It's very similar as far as being a strong hip hinge from a deep stretch, deep range of motion. In fact, arguably the range of motion there is longer than on the deadlift, even on the deficit deadlift. So isn't there movement pattern carryover in addition to building up all the musculature involved or most of the muscles? But the difference there is that you can do large numbers of sets of 10 on the good mornings. I do 6 sets of those every week. Right, with limit sets. Heaviest weights I can handle for 10 reps. Do 3 by 10 twice a week right now. And I always try to go for PRs on it. Change bars if we can't get PRs. Change something. But we want to have that training volume. And the volume of doing those good mornings builds up the musculature involved with the deadlift, and it replicates a similar type movement pattern of practicing going through a hinge, right? We're practicing an actual hip hinge here, which is what a deadlift is. It's a hip hinge off the floor. So we have 2 different ways to get carryover through repetition, through training volume. Because we don't get jacked and strong just by doing a heavy single. Can it contribute to the process of getting jacked and strong? Absolutely. But it will never develop most of your strength. It really just actualizes and helps you actualize the potential that you have. All of your strength potential is forged in the fires of all this training volume. This is where we build it out of. This is where it is forged. Same thing, you watched me do that bench press, but are you really going to get that strong just doing a heavy single against bands or pause or whatever different bench you're doing? No. Will it contribute? You bet it will. But if you think about it, a good analogy would be our actual strength is forged in the fires of the volume. And maybe the max effort work is just polishing the edge. Maybe it's just sharpening that blade afterwards. And realistically, that's what max effort work does. It sharpens the blade. It gives you that final edge. Gives you that final edge in maximizing the strength that you have the potential for. But that potential comes from the actual training volume. And the same thing over here, you'll see me doing large numbers of closed grip bench presses. Right, in this case, I've got 245 on there for sets of 10 on the closed grip bench. Well, the closed grip bench is easier to recover from. It's easier on my joints, has a longer range of motion, and so on and so forth versus my actual wide grip pause bench. Okay, this is a better hypertrophy tool. Slightly better. Is it enormously better? No, slightly better. But it has movement pattern carryover. Because it's several inches space difference on the hands, the movement pattern is very, very similar. Works all the same muscles. Then you'll also see me doing JM presses to help build the triceps up to make me better at closed grip benching. Now, a lot of people say, well, that JM press doesn't have a whole lot of movement pattern carryover. It doesn't have a whole lot of movement pattern carryover to your bench. There's some, but it's not the same. Yeah, but it has great movement pattern carryover to the closed grip. And it builds up the triceps to make me better at the closed grip benching. And what happens if we build up the triceps and we build up a movement pattern similar to the closed grip bench? The closed grip bench improves. And then we have more effective volume because we can move heavier weights and more tonnage on the closed grip, which what in turn makes our bench go up. Right? Could we do similar things and look at stuff like the good morning? Good morning helps build the deadlift, and the stronger we get at the good morning, the stronger we get at the deadlift, right? If your good mornings go up, your conventional deadlifts tend to go up. May not scale perfectly, but there's definitely a very large correlation there. And it makes sense. The good morning works at least 50% of the muscles involved in the deadlift, right? At least 50%, at least the primary movers. So a lot of the stabilizers and grip and everything else, not so much, but all the primary movers, it does work maximally. Or are there other movement patterns we can do to help build the good morning? I don't know, I feel like my reverse hypers help with that. Now, we could argue the reverse hyper is getting over to a movement pattern. Very different, very, very different from my deadlift. But it builds all the muscles up of the good morning. And it helps you recover from the good morning by using a large amount of training volume. So it feeds the good morning, helps you recover from the good mornings in the deadlifts because of the traction effect it creates. You can do very, very large volumes of training on it. And it will improve your good morning. You see where we're going with this? We can use these different volume exercises that have direct movement pattern carryover, right? And we can train them for volume. We can train them for volume and to build the musculature and have movement pattern carryover, such as the closed grip bench for your bench press, the good morning for your deadlift. Then we can do training volume with other exercises that are even easier to recover from to fill in the weak links and build the musculature and give some movement pattern carryover to our supplemental lift. Okay? And that's a good way to look at it. I've heard people like Louis Simmons say, well, I know if I can build a closed grip bench press, the closed grip bench press will build my bench press. So how do I build the closed grip bench press? Well, we use these other exercises to help do that. And it's this whole cycle of volume and a synergy of one exercise feeding another. One exercise is feeding another. It's addressing the weak points and the weak links of one exercise that helps improve your main exercises. But it's all volume training. All right, it's all volume at the end of the day because it is training volume. And that includes the tension involved. That's the main driver of hypertrophy. And if we can increase the size of the engine, we increase the potential horsepower. Car guys get that. There's a car expression. There's no replacement for displacement. Right? There's a degree of truth to that. Well, it's the same thing with muscular potential. Sure, we can get really, really strong for our size and maximize our strength at any given size very effectively inside of a person. But if you just get bigger, it's going to be a lot easier. And that's exactly what the training volume does. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.